Often when we act from a place of what makes sense is coming from a place of irrational fear, not rational fear. There are certain rational fears, like don't get eaten by the bear. Irrational fear, scarcity, and escapism. Let me repeat that again. So I've talked about this idea of being in alignment, of understanding what it means to be in alignment, of understanding what it means to fall out of alignment, how to generally kind of keep yourself in check. So I want to elaborate a little bit more about this idea of love, of acting from a place of love and abundance versus from a place of fear and scarcity. I mean, we've talked about the fact that generally what we do is driven by, passion versus circumstance, or us wanting to move towards pleasure and away from pain. But how sometimes that can be, either one of those can be coming from the right place or the wrong place, okay? You can move away from pain and you can be doing it from the wrong place or from the right place. And similarly, you can move towards pleasure and be doing it from the wrong place and from the right place. And this is going to lay the foundation of when we're going to talk about how to make sure that our ambitions in life are generally coming from the right place. Okay, so that we don't veer off the path and so that we don't fall out of alignment. This is all kind of interconnected. And so in this video, I want to focus on acting from a place of love and abundance versus fear and scarcity, because usually when we talk about acting from the wrong place versus from the right place, we are talking about acting from a place of wrong place is fear, well, right place is love, in a very broad sense. Okay, in a very broad sense. And so I want to give you a little bit of a framework to help you understand how to make long and short-term decisions that come from the right place, that come from a place of love and abundance versus fear and scarcity, okay? So on a macro level, long-term, let's say, you want to do what feels right versus what makes sense, okay? Because usually when we think macro, what makes sense is coming from a place of irrational fear, not rational fear. There are certain rational fears, like don't get eaten by the bear. Irrational fear, scarcity, and escapism. Let me repeat that again. Often when we act from a place of what makes sense, long-term on a macro level, it is often, unless we are keeping ourselves in check and we know what to look for, it is often coming from a place of irrational fear, scarcity, or escapism, okay? And in a separate video, I'm gonna elaborate more on how all these fears can manifest and what they can all look like. They can get quite nuanced and it can get quite interesting, okay? You don't even realize to what extent fear takes control and drives your decisions. But, and this again could be due to nature and nurture and all kinds of bad conditioning and traumas. But for now, let's kind of stick to the model, is that long-term, we want to try to account for irrational fear and do what feels right, okay? Do something that aligns with our heart, aligns with love, aligns with the 4 cardinal virtues we talked about in Stoicism, right? And usually you kind of know what feels right, what is your calling and, or your purpose, whatever it is, what is your truth, right? You usually know. If you account for that irrational fear, you usually know. And it's easy, and the reason I say that long-term, it's important to do this is that it's easier to figure that out on a very macro level. Like you might say, you know what? I really want to fucking pursue a career as a stand-up comedian. Okay, and let's say it's for the right reasons, right? And sometimes we have to actually navigate through life in order to figure out, peel more layers and figure out our motivations to understand, well, maybe this wasn't for the wrong reason, but you have to kind of start somewhere, right? So maybe ultimately you don't want to be a stand-up comedian, right? And you don't want to do comedy, and you realize later you did it for the wrong reasons. But initially, you might have this calling. And I think it's important to follow that calling, right? Because it's pointing you in the right direction. It's saying your evolution starts here, okay? And so let's say you kind of know deep down this is what you want to do, but then you're like, no, right? The irrational fears, the scarcity, all that shit creeps in. No, that doesn't make sense. No, that's not realistic, okay? And so you're like, no, I'm not going to do that. But it's easier to at least identify that's what you want to do, okay? And so that's what you want to do. You want to start on that path and figure it out.
Hey, what up? It's me again. Just having a cocktail here, but I wanted to quickly interrupt to, one, make sure you're paying attention, and two, to let you know that everything you're learning here is directly and indirectly related to building your dream dating life, and just overall a life that is healthy, win-win, and on your terms. Now, when you're done the video, I recommend you take a few minutes to go to the link below where you can watch a very entertaining and informative video on what steps you need to take to begin your very own transformation. If you're up for it, that is. I guess you first need to ask yourself, and pardon my French here, but do you want to fuck lots of hot poon, or do you want to fuck lots of hunt? As well as find love, discover the meaning of life, and become a self-developed, self-respecting man. Okay, end of pep talk. Back to the video. Go check out the link below when you're done, or I will personally call your mother and have her force you.
Okay. I don't want to get too hung up on like the whole process and how it's gonna unfold, but that's the model. Long term or macro level, do what feels right versus what makes sense, because it's easier to identify at least. Micro, on a short term or day-to-day level, you do the reverse. You do what makes sense versus what feels right. Why? Because on a day-to-day basis, if you've already established what you want to do long-term, what feels right long-term, then it's easier to say, okay, in order to do this, what makes sense is for me to, start writing comedy, take some courses, go to my local clubs, and you've identified what makes sense, right? Once you're already in alignment with the macro, okay? But then you have to follow that because on a day-to-day basis, what feels right is going to be the opposite. That's going to be driven by laziness, escapism, scarcity, irrational fears. Oh no, I don't want to go up there and do open mic night. No, I don't want to take this course. It's just scary. Like, what does it imply? No, I don't want to take the cold shower, whatever it is. We can't trust our day-to-day what feels right, because it takes time to build a habit, to build momentum. This is why I always say action creates motivation. On a short-term basis, you can't trust what feels right. You have to follow what makes sense. Look, ultimately, what feels right and what makes sense need to align. In an ideal world where there is no fear and there is no, scarcity and escapism and laziness and all that stuff, that's all like boom in alignment. Everything is crystal clear. In a less than ideal world, you have to make sense of things and properly gauge things and go through a certain kind of process. And so I always say, start with the long term, start with the macro level, what feels right, do that versus what makes sense. It's easier to identify. Now that you've identified, on a short-term basis, you decide what makes sense versus what feels right. Now, similarly, when it comes to meeting and attracting women, okay, you identify, well, long-term, it feels right to pursue this, to learn how to get good at this, to start, going out, to take the Honest Signals Bootcamp, to buy the courses, wink, wink, right? To read all these other books, to develop. You've identified that. Like at least let's say you've made that that step when you've decided, like, this is something I need to do. I need help with this. I've admitted this to myself, right? In order to compete at a certain level, I need to perform at a certain level. okay, as I've talked about. Then you identify, okay, now on a short-term basis, assuming you're in alignment and you're committed, what do I need to do? Okay, I need to start going out 4 days a week. I need to go out on these days at these times. You set everything up. I'm gonna be making a whole separate video on the process of getting good. There's a whole process of how to get good at anything, including how to get a woman. What is good process, okay? But for now here, in very broad strokes, so then now you establish, here are the short-term steps. Here's what I need to do on a day-to-day basis. I need to read the books, watch the courses, do my vocal exercises, do my affirmations, talk to X amount of girls. I need to push my limits when I'm out and try this thing and learn how to be more flirtatious, etc. Do your best, okay? Do your best. We sometimes think something feels right, but then we later understand that it was coming from the wrong place. Scratch the itch and then you calibrate. You pursue this thing, and then you maybe start pursuing the wrong kinds of girls, or you pursue comedy and you realize, no, I didn't want comedy. In fact, I want to be, a metals trader or a fisherman or a scuba diving instructor, okay, a YouTuber. You try things, you follow the compass until it leads you to the truth. You peel the layers until it leads you to the truth, and you calibrate and you calibrate, and you do these honest audits over time. But you have to be making some kind of decisions that, that feel right, that are in alignment to some degree, that are at that moment your truth until it no longer becomes your truth. Maybe you're pursuing becoming successful with women, then you realize you're overdoing it, you're overstretching yourself, you're going for the wrong girls, you're constantly jumping around, you're maybe not committing, you're not getting into a relationship when you should be out of some kind of fear or escapism, right? So you recalibrate, you say, you know what, maybe now a relationship is good for me, maybe I know deep down that's what I think I really want to test, but I'm scared of the commitment, I'm scared of missing out, I'm scared of this, I'm scared of that. Or maybe I also need to start working on my business or my health, and I don't want to face that, so I keep escaping with just going out too much. So you recalibrate. So you're always kind of following a certain truth. So that's the model that I want you to kind of keep in mind. Macro level, what feels right versus what makes sense, or long-term, what feels right versus what makes sense. I prefer macro over long-term. Macro at any given moment in time, okay? Micro, the day-to-day, what makes sense versus what feels right, because we need to build habits. We can't trust our day-to-day laziness. We need to kind of build that momentum. And again, you do honest audits over the course of time.
All right, man. Thanks for watching. I hope you're enjoying this content and that it really helps you make some moves in the right direction. Sincerely, because everything I teach, I have lived and breathed and contemplated ad nauseum. Unlike a bunch of these cookie cutter life coach clowns out there that regurgitate some shit they read in a book and call themselves experts. With that in mind, if you want to go deeper, if you want to really know what it takes to become the kind of guy that can confidently attract and manage relationships with quality women on your terms and in a way that is healthy and honest, no scummy or gimmicky shit here. And if you generally want to live a life of truth, freedom, love, courage, and adventure, then as Tom Cruise famously said in Jerry Maguire, help me help you, and go click the link below. There's a very entertaining and informative video that will shed some light on how you can get started. Do it, or you will forever perish into the dark abyss. But seriously, go check it out. Let's kickstart this journey of personal development together and help you reinvent yourself into a sex god.